Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. And if everybody can hear me okay, I'll go ahead and get started.
We can hear you fine. Perfect.
Great. Okay. Let's do it this way. So I'm Jill. I'm here at the University of Denver, and I'm just going to tell you everything that we did for our Microsoft Teams implementation at DU. Even though it's University of Denver, we call it DU. There's lots of theories for why, but we won't get into that this time. So just to give you a little bit of background about DU. So we have around 13,000 students. We're about half grad students and half undergrad, about 5,000 faculty and staff. And then we've been using Office 365 since 2014. So we're not new to Office 365, but prior to this implementation, we did not have Teams turned on at all. So this was basically from ground zero. What we did have was a couple of departments who had reached out to us to ask if they could have Teams, which that ended up working out for us in the long run because we could use them for a couple different things that I'll get into later. So we just had a very small amount of people on campus using Teams before we got going, and that was in December. So there was basically 4 steps for our implementation. The first one was training and configuration, and training meaning training the IT people, resource documentation, the rollout challenge, and then the lunch and learn. So I'm actually just going to kind of skip the step 1 and go right into number 2, which is where I come in. So as far as the resource documentation, what's great about vendors like Microsoft is that they have their own documentation. So there's nothing that we needed to write, but we wanted to make sure that we had curated the resources all in one place. So this is from our IT website. Oh, actually, it just switched to the wrong screen. Hang on.
And Jill, this is office hours.
Okay.
So this is office hours. So we also get to ask you questions. And
okay.
As Preston and I hear lots of questions, please spend 3 minutes on how long you've been at University of Denver, what you came into, and then what you decided to do. That's, I think, the other really exciting part of this story.
Okay. All right. So can you repeat that question again while I try to figure out my screen? How long I've been here?
No worries. Don't worry about the screen. Yeah. So how long? So you came to the University of Denver, not that long ago. So kind of tell them how you came into this scenario. You're new to University of Denver.
So I've been at DU for almost 2 years now, but I'm new to IT about 3 months. Basically, right when we started this rollout was right when I was starting at IT. So before this, I was an educational technology specialist. And so I was basically the LMS administrator and providing training and stuff like that. But then this position in IT came along, which is basically an adoption specialist analyst type role, which has never historically been part of the IT environment. So basically, they kind of realized that aside from what we typically do when we roll out a new technology, which is send an email, and that's kind of where it ends, or a few emails maybe, we needed something else to really drive adoption and get people interested in new products. So that's where I come in.
So prior to you getting into this role, right, you're new to IT, you kind of knew how things worked, but you were kind of trying to figure out things. There was a problem, which was you'd spent there was a lot of effort put into Teams, and there was just a lack of adoption. Simple problem, right? Simple problem, but it's a harder problem to solve, and that's kind of where this presentation comes in. So I love the fact that we have a new employee, 2 role, thinking a little outside the box about what they're going to do and why they did it. And I love that part of the story, Jill. So I just wanted to share that with the audience and kind of tease that out of you a little bit. I'm done interrupting you until I interrupt you again.
No, I think that's really helpful, and I think that's half the problem is that there's just never enough people or people with the time to do something like this. So just having a specific person who this is my goal in life right now is to do this rollout and do it well was the hardest part of the problem. We just need someone who's able to spend their time on doing something like this.
Wonderful.
So I will go back to this screen, and this is where our landing page basically for Microsoft Teams lives. So because another problem that we have in our IT department is that we don't have any trainers. We don't offer any type of training. And we don't have another person or another line coming up or any plans to hire any more trainers right now. So what we're trying to do is curate a list of resources so that people do have a place to go. So we basically kind of laid out what is Microsoft Teams, little intro video here, who can use it, what are the features and benefits, and one of the big questions that we get a lot of the times is, well, why should I use it? Because when we roll out a new tool, okay, cool, that's Teams, it's a chat-based workspace feature, but like, why would I use that instead of using Zoom? Or why would I use that instead of using just a listserv that we normally do for things like this? So we laid out specific examples and use cases. So if you right now are using Zoom to record meetings, then you have to send them out, send the link or share them or upload them somewhere. You could just create a team, schedule your meetings in Teams and have them recorded right in there. Document collaboration, calendar coordination. So just some real relevant things that we think people are going to be using Teams for in our community. Then we've got how do I start using Teams, which is basically just download and then sign in with your DU email and password. And then really importantly is the training resources. So we took these all from Microsoft, the quick start articles, the getting started playlist on YouTube, which these really quick short videos are really useful, productive meeting tips playlist on YouTube, getting started, which is that instructor-led training that Microsoft offers. A lot of people want that more one-on-one, high-touch type of training. And then the running effective meetings. And then we also have a university subscription to LinkedIn Learning. So that's only for faculty and staff, but we called that out here too. So plenty of resources for people to learn how to use it whenever they have time. Then we had another big question that kept coming up, which is what is the difference between groups and teams? So we had a lot of groups users before we rolled out Teams, so we wanted to make sure that people knew exactly what the difference was between the two and if they wanted to transition to one or not. Then we just have some FAQs.
Sorry, can I just ask what you mean in context? Is that just a security group or is that an actual Office 365 group you're talking about?
Which one?
In the groups, you had people using groups. Is that the Office 365 group context or? Okay.
Yes, yes, Office 365 groups. So that is our landing page. And then I'll go back down to this. So the next part, the part that I find the most exciting, is the rollout challenge. So this was a lot of fun to put together. And again, the goal was just to get people interactive with it, get people using Teams so that maybe if they try it, then they would like it, or at least know if they're more likely to use it for one scenario or another. So for the rollout challenge, what we basically did was send them an email every day for a week. And this is the first email that they got. Welcome to the Teams Rollout Challenge. Starting today and continuing through next week, we're giving away prizes for trying out Microsoft Teams. So the challenges are super simple. This is the first day and the challenge is just to log in. So you download Teams, sign into Teams, and then go to our big open team, which is the IT at DU Teams Rollout Challenge, and join it. That's it, and then you're entered to win. 2 people get to win. We posted a picture of the prize here. And then towards the end, the last step of the rollout challenge was that lunch and learn. So every single email, we had this big invite to get people to RSVP for the lunch and learn. We also linked our Teams page here, and then we linked those trainings as well. So every day we had a challenge like that. And here are the participation numbers for those challenges. So the first day, in the first email, we had 320 people. I'll also note that we did this during a break. So this was in the middle of December. We had no students here and in class except student workers. And then we had a lot of faculty, I'm sure, that were away. So this was mostly geared towards staff. So we had 320, and then it kind of gone up every day. A lot of new users every day. And then the pizza icon is who signed up for the lunch and learn. Since we were having pizza, we just used that for all the marketing tactics here. So every day we had more people signing up for the Lunch and Learn as well. And then down below, I've noted what the challenges were. So the first day, they just have to join the team. The second day, we asked them a question, which is, what's your favorite place on campus? Totally unrelated to anything, just to get people to learn how to use the chat features. Then on day 3, we had them upload a file or create a new file in a specific channel. Then in day 4, we had them add a comment to a file. And this one actually ended up way different than we were expecting. We totally expected everyone to log in and comment done, or here I am, here's my comment, that type of thing. But this turned into a great tool to get feedback on the challenge. So we were in day 4 at that point. And on the next slide, I have some comments that people had added to that file. So we just asked them to add a random comment, but what we got was how excited people were about the challenge. So there's some comments there. And there was—
Those are fantastic.
Yeah, so it was great. And there was just hundreds of people like praising the challenge. So it also really brought everyone together from different parts of the community, because a lot of times you're not seeing people across campus. So that was another unique part of the challenge too. So then after that, we had the Lunch and Learn, and that was kind of the culminating event that we reminded them of every single day during the challenge. And by the end, we had more RSVPs than we can fit in the room. It was a packed house. Everyone had pizza. There was standing people in the back. And then what we did, these are the 2 people from the departments who were using Teams to begin with before we had the challenge. So they were really the experts on it and had the most experience in using it in their organization. So we just had them stand up and show how they're using it. And basically it turned into a Q&A. People asked lots of questions and really increased awareness. And then the other thing that really came out of this that I love is that we don't have any trainers, but both of these people randomly volunteered to be a resource to other departments who are wanting to implement Teams, and basically volunteered to be a trainer if anyone needed it. So we've already used both of them to go out to departments and show what they're doing, basically do another little demo of how they're using it in their department, and then answer questions if needed.
I think that's a testament to you to get people excited, but to get them to volunteer to be champions and help you scale. That's wonderful.
That was great. It was an unexpected benefit of this for sure. So then the last challenge was actually to fill out a survey, a feedback survey on the entire challenge itself. So then we got even more feedback. So here's some comments that we got from people, and overwhelmingly, people called out that it was fun and interactive. A ton of people commented on the idea of the prizes and incentives. So not a huge surprise, but definitely something that we'll continue to do in the future, because people basically said I wouldn't have done it if there wasn't a prize. They also said they felt more connected with the DU community because people across campus chiming in. And then basically the small tasks and being able to do just a little bit, it doesn't take up my whole day, but I'm able to kind of get in and see what it's like. People enjoyed that as well. So that is basically it.
That's fantastic, Jill. Thank you for sharing that. Now the questions start. So do you mind if I ask a few before we open it up to the audience? And again,
Sure.
You know, some creativity, some marketing ploys, right? Things kind of as a still recovering IT geek, I don't always get. Preston's still an IT geek. I'm kind of recovering, but you know, how do we, so, you know, you had this problem, you thought about it. I spend a lot of time in universities, your size and larger and smaller, speaking about governance, right? So how did the organization decide? So first off, did you turn on Teams for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So when you got to that decision point, did you have, was it, you know, just kind of free for all, anybody could do anything they want, or did you have kind of some basic teams, you know, team channels, sub channels, certain things that they were allowed to do, or that, you know, from a governance standpoint that the DU team decided on? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I will say that I wasn't here when those decisions were being made, so I've caught on to some of the things that were decided. But back then, that was before I joined the team. What I do know is that there's a list of words that can't be used when people are creating
Okay.
teams. And I know they got together to define what that list would be.
Mm-hmm.
And then other than that, it's kind of a free-for-all. Let's turn it on for everyone. Anyone can make a team. Anyone can decide what type of team that is. And that's kind of that. But one thing that we relied on is that it's not anonymous. Everyone's going to be able to be called out if they do something bad. So we haven't really seen any bad behavior. I'd be curious what other people have in place as far as rules or governance.
And that's, it's an interesting point, right? So we all have terms of use that people sign off on in terms of how they should conduct themselves on campus. But just because they should doesn't mean they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we still need to hold ourselves responsible for that fact. And students are in on this as well, faculty, staff, and students.
Right.
And so what is your user numbers today? I looked it up, but you went from a couple hundred back in December to where you're at today in terms of average monthly users.
That's a great question. Conveniently, our admin left last week, and I'm not the admin. I might end up being the admin. So I don't know. At one point, someone had told me that there was 800 daily active users. So I think that was in January at some point. But the interesting part. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, you go.
Well, the interesting part was that half of those were students, and we hardly had any students on campus when we rolled it out. So it's kind of like you don't even need to roll it out to them. As soon as it's there, the students will jump on it. And we are going to do something specifically for them later. But right now, we haven't reached out to them.
So I checked about 2 weeks ago, and you were between 3,000 and 4,000 monthly active users, which is kind of the metric that we look at in terms of our side. And, again, it's even bigger than kind of where you thought we were. Those governance decisions, right? Those are where the hard decisions need to be made in terms of, hey, we're going to just open up and let people do what they want to do versus, depending on the culture of the campus, hey, we want to have some basic structures. We want to have a process by which, right? Okay, you can turn on a team as an owner, but now you need to, whatever the workflow is, maybe it's a form, maybe it's a web portal, whatever you throw up. So I see a lot of that. And those are the kind of questions that I've seen a lot of organizations really struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that you just kind of turned it on, right? You have, between faculty, staff, and students and administrators, 13, 14,000 people on campus.
Right.
It sounds like the training, people, there were a couple of trainings, you have some assets out there. This wasn't like this huge training endeavor, right? And are people allowed to do peer-to-peer voice?
That's a great question. I actually don't even know.
Okay, awesome.
We haven't promoted it at all.
I bet you somebody's figured that out. I'm not sure if anybody is on from the University of Denver account team or the V team that works with Jill and our friends at DU, but if you do, I'd love to see if there's anybody can give any advice there on what actually is taking place. But this is cool stuff, right? You took 10, 15 minutes and kind of shared with us your experience. What I'd love to do is just kind of pause a little bit. Thank you. That's awesome. Preston, do you have any additional questions you would like to ask of Jill before we open it up for Q&A?
Yeah.
No, go right ahead. You're fine. Jump in.
So I had a question. Just did you implement any data governance / lifecycle to the data, or is the expectation that this data will just exist forever?
As far as deleting data?
Yeah. So the files, the data retention on the direct messages.
So right now there isn't anything. There's no deletion set up. We're actually going to meet, I think, later this week and talk about it. We're kind of like playing it by ear, as you can tell. But right now we haven't set any limits on that.
Do you have state requirement on that subject? Do you have state requirements for public disclosure? So you get a Freedom of Information Act request that says, I need to know all the information about foo from du.edu, do you have to comply with those sorts of requests, or if so,
I don't know.
what the process is?
I don't know. You're talking to the
So-
wrong person about the back end setup there.
Certainly with, if we can just pause on that note, within M365, right, you have the ability through data loss prevention and a bunch of the query tools that we have to absolutely get access to that data if you were to get foiled. So everything is absolutely discoverable, just like in the rest of Office 365, with the same data controls generally in place, both on the logs, the information, how it's getting shared, who did what, when, et cetera.
Yeah, because a lot of people will use it as a chat, and they don't think that it's e-discoverable. So that's a word of caution for that.
Yeah, and then on our side, we had the kind of the same thing where I would say that Washington State is probably one of the worst for e-discovery because of our very, very liberal freedom of information acts at the state level. Hopefully most people don't have to face that, but so where we have is both requirements by law to delete records by a certain date, and also the requirement to expose those records when we haven't deleted them by the appropriate date. So it is kind of one of the challenges we faced. And I was just curious if you were where you were. And sorry, just to back up, I was just curious about the overall population, and I'm not sure I caught what your final daily active rate ended up being. Like kind of percentage, like the kind of total population at DU versus the number of people you've got active today.
Yeah, did you say 3,000 to 4,000?
I can help
You're
with
in the
that,
street?
you guys. David, sorry,
Yeah,
this is
go
Lisa.
ahead.
I'm one of the account reps for DU, and I'm looking at it as we speak. So, Jill, you did awesome, by the way. Thank you. You explained everything so well. So awesome job. But looking at it, you guys are at 2275 right now, and so that's out of what, 13,000 total? Yeah.
Yeah, and like I say, when we announce this to students, I anticipate there being an uptick in users there too, but I think they're already catching on.
So to be clear, again, you haven't even, I don't know if I knew that part of this story, that you have not formally announced this tool's availability to your student population yet.
Right. Yeah, nothing's gone out to them.
All right. Wow. Interesting. So they're obviously using that. That's not all faculty and staff. So out of your population of, you said how many, 12,000 students? And you have about 1,500 or so, 2,000 faculty and staff and administrators and other folks?
About 5,000 faculty and staff.
Oh, 5,000. Wow. All right.
And,
awesome.
And just one more that's really important, I think, for this particular group is did you enable the classroom Teams functionality in any way?
It is available, but that's just another thing that we haven't really looked into a ton. We don't have it. Well, that's something that we've been asked about actually, but it's not currently connected to the LMS, right? Because that's not a functionality yet, but we're very interested in getting that going. But right now we're just going to let people try it out in their classroom, even though it's not connected. And I have a couple of faculty who I know who are using it. Are just going to come back and tell me how it goes, and then we might do more, maybe a lunch and learn just for faculty or something like that.
And sorry, 2 follow-up questions to that. Which LMS are you using right now?
Canvas.
Okay, perfect. Same as us. And I guess that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, does anybody else have additional questions that they'd like to ask right now? I'm curious. Oh, it looks like Marge did have a question here. Are you doing something different for professors using Teams in class versus staff? And so
yeah, kind of covered that one. Basically, no, but in the future, we'll see what we can do to make it more personalized based on their roles.
So I think the question that I have for you is, having been through the journey as far as you are now, not that you're done and you got lots more to do, but is there anything that you look back, Jill, and say, geez, if I had this to do over again, I would change this?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things that I didn't anticipate was that the Teams team, the one that everybody was going in to join for the challenge, turned into kind of a help desk-ish vibe, and I didn't have anyone from the help desk there to field questions. So it ended up being, at first I was trying to answer all the questions that came in, but as we got into the hundreds of people and they were kind of coming in too fast, we started just directing people to submit a ticket with the IT help desk because we couldn't get to them fast enough, or the people started asking questions in that document where they were supposed to post a comment. So they totally got lost in there. So in the future, what I would probably do is just have more people manning the challenge group themselves, rather than just having the one person. I didn't think about that before, but we didn't know how many people were going to join either.
So here's one of the things that I love about this community, right? And we're sharing these ideas, and it's not all baked. We're all learning new things. When I get back to my office, whenever that is, sometime next week or later today, we actually have a chat bot that's already up on GitHub. Preston, maybe you can send the link, or I'll put in the Teams channel with about 300 pre-formatted questions. You need to have maybe a little bit of Azure on the back end, but it took me about 20 minutes to stand it up in my Teams environment. And it is really cool, right? So using AI on the back end, and it's got all these pre-formatted Q&A things. So, hey, I hit the question tab and I say, hey, I'd like to talk to the support desk. I don't know how to create a team. And it'll actually give you step-by-step instructions with a link to the web page, right? That you don't even have to deal with. So I'm going to share that with you. Maybe we can spin that up one day, Preston, on the community call. As part of that, really easy stuff to do. Listen, Preston's way smarter, better looking, can jump higher and fly faster than me. And it really was not that hard to do. And man, if I had something different that I could do with some of the schools, that support side of it always is, how many people do we need? Well, can you tell me, David, how many FTE are we going to need to increase in our support staff to support this? Well, what'd you do for Slack? Nothing. People, generally figure out a lot of this stuff. But I think that's a big differentiator in terms of ETs as well.
That's awesome. Are there pre-populated questions around Teams?
It's all Teams. It's
cool.
All, how do I start a team? How do I start a chat? Hey, I don't know where the button is. You'll have it shortly. I see Preston busily finding a link on GitHub. If I know Preston in the middle of the airport, best.
Yeah, if I can figure out which one you're referencing, Dave, I will post that link. It turns out there are lots of bots on GitHub if you're really feeling saucy.
Thank you.
There is. I've been. You bet. I'll actually put that with the links in the Teams channel. By request, I will send over the. Preston, you might want to go on mute.
Oh, I apologize.
It's fine when you're talking, the noise cancellation works, but it doesn't. And we'll send over. By request, I'll send over the spreadsheet that the AI references in terms of building the query database that we already have and has been fairly vetted on our side by some of our Teams folks.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll find that one, but or you can find that one and post it so you know if we got the right one. But there was a really cool one in here that I got to tell a story on real quick. There was a university many years ago who made the change to Office 365, had a help desk shortage issue. And so they crowdsourced all of their help desk essentially for it. What they did is they had a couple interns who essentially trolled Yammer, and they used Yammer for crowdsourcing all the questions and answers. And when somebody would post a good answer, the interns would take and put that into a Q&A. So interestingly, there is a crowdsource bot on GitHub for Teams. Just kind of fun.
Cool.
I'd throw that out. All right,
That's awesome.
Excellent. So if you guys are good with that, we're kind of at the top of the hour. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this time. Jill, thank you so much. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you.